Hello and welcome to News Center. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Uncle Sam is ready to welcome the elite to America. At a time when the Trump administration is on a mass deportation overture, they're ready to hand out permanent residencies to those who can dole out $5 million. Trump has announced that the new $5 million golden visa will offer a path to citizenship just like the EB-5. It will also provide you a green card and permanent residency. But the golden visa would replace the 35-year-old EB-5 program. It would also raise the minimum investment requirement from $1 million to $5 million. That's a 5-time increase and makes it the most expensive golden visa program in the world. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said this is being done to do away with visa fraud and other nonsense. The White House also said that this would not require congressional approval. Trump said his administration could sell 10 million golden visas to reduce deficit. Here's how other golden visa nations stack up. Close to 100 nations offer golden visas. UAE's golden visa is the most preferred and costs around $544,000 US. Portugal's golden visa also costs around $500,000 US. UK would cost you around $2.5 million. Greece would be around $262,000 US, and Italy would be around the same amount as well. What does all of this mean for Indians wishing to live the American dream? Remember, 10,000 Indian millionaires migrated abroad in the last 2 years, according to various reports. And 16 lakh Indians have actually surrendered their citizenship since 2011 and settled in 135 nations, as per a parliamentary reply. Let me now go across to Kristin Surak, Associate Professor of Political Sociology at the London School of Economics, and she's also the author of The Golden Passport. I'm also joined by Rohit Bharadwaj, Country Head, India and Director, Private Clients at Henley and Partners, an investment migration consultancy firm. Ms. Surak, if I can begin with you, how do you think the Golden Visa program will be different from the EB-5 program, which has already been around for 30 years?
Indeed. So in some ways, Trump's announcement wasn't too terribly surprising because there's been a program in place for quite some time in the U.S. The big difference that he announced in his press conference is the increase in price. It will go up by nearly 5 times. Now, he suggested that that might be sweetened a bit by getting rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and the hassles and the potential fraud that has been going on through the EB-5 program over the years. Currently, if you're an Indian citizen and you're applying for the EB-5 program, your waiting time is likely to be well over 5 years. And so what Trump, in putting up the price, is suggesting that that will be smooth. But of course, whether or not it's worth paying 5 times as much is another question.
Right. Do you think, of course, the price is restrictive, but are there other restrictions which we don't know about just yet?
Well, his press conference was very sketchy on details. There hasn't been a formal policy announcement yet, which he said would come in 2 weeks' time. So I think at that point, even basic questions such as, is it going to be a $5 million donation to the government, or will it be a $5 million investment, which an investor might be able to get back in the end? Even those basics haven't been made clear yet. So there's still a lot of waiting going on.
Right. Let me also get it, Rohit Bharadwaj. Rohit, how do you see this program? Do you see a lesser number of Indians now choosing the United States as an option?
Well, thanks, Parikshit. But I think, the announcement has come very recent. So ideally, it remains to be seen whether, this will be a residence by investment program, similar design as different countries which have designed golden visa with a path to being eligible to apply for a citizenship down the line, or it is a direct to citizenship by investment program, ideally. But having said that, for the Indian families, the aspirationals and the quality of lifestyle, US has always been traditionally for many years, a dream to basically settle and relocate. But looking at right now, the confusion which is arisen, specifically whether the EB-5 program will remain in the current mode, or it is likely to be replaced by the new announced 5 million gold card, is something which we will definitely wait and watch. But having said that, at Henley and Partners, we've actually onboarded many clients, more than 94 nationalities, and the top nationalities include China, Vietnam, and India, specifically for the EB-5 program. The demand is something which we need to wait and watch, as more details will come likely in the coming weeks and months as well.
Professor Surak, if I were to ask you, those Indians, for example, who are currently on H-1B in the US, hoping that they could get a path to permanent residency through an EB-5, how do you think they are going to be impacted in the US?
It's interesting because in his press announcement, where President Trump talked about potentially big companies like Google paying for these visas for their employees. And traditionally, that's been a space that has indeed been taken up by the H-1B visas. And the Indian nationals are the largest number of people who've taken up those H-1B visas that are aimed really at tech expertise and bringing that into the US. However, the cost for an H-1B is it's not that expensive at all. There's a cap on the numbers, which I think that cap has been controversial, and those numbers have been hit very, almost within the first few months of every single year. There's much more demand than there's actual supply. But given this huge difference in cost, a lot of people on H-1B visas are actually just kind of earning middle class to upper middle class incomes, in which case 5 million isn't that much. And it's unlikely that the companies themselves are really going to be willing to pay 5 million unless you really are fundamental star talent, in which case there might be other visa options for you that are much cheaper and easier. So it's hard to see this program as doing much to take the pressure off of H-1B, which has been a real key way for Indian tech experts to make it into the US.
Right. Let me go back to Rohit as well. Rohit, Bharadwaj, which are the most popular countries? We have been reading reports that UAE is the most preferred destination for Indian businessmen wanting to migrate abroad. Which would be some of the other top destinations right now, according to you?
Well, in terms of the proximity of the location, and of course, the kind of changes that the government has done in UAE is definitely has been interest not only for the the Indian diaspora but also globally from all parts of the world, including the developed nations. We keep on introducing the recent private wealth migration and the number of the wealth creation which is happening all over the world, specifically from developed nations like US and also from India and China. That has seen an uptake not just in UAE, but also related to a lot of other reasons. A lot of people have understood the concept of having a plan B or a second home, specifically after the lockdown, which we saw roughly 4 years back. So for a wealthy client, who understands the value of diversification in terms of the investments, they also realize that, having a domicile as a diversification strategy as part of the portfolio is something which can be utilized as an insurance policy in the future. So from that aspect, we have seen a certain increase, in the last 3 to 4 years, specifically in the European residents by investment programs or so-called golden visas from a plan B or second home options in Europe as well. But nonetheless, US and the Commonwealth countries, which are English-speaking nations, from a relocation strategy aspect, that still is widely popular in terms of the interest.
Right. And in your book, The Golden Passport, Professor Surak, you look at the kind of people who look to migrate abroad through golden visas. Could you give us a sense of some of the trends that you've seen over the years? One of the things that Howard Lutnick, the US Commerce Secretary, mentioned when Trump was making this announcement was that we want to do away with visa fraud and all the nonsense related to EB-5. But raising the cost, does it help?
Well, those are two somewhat separate questions. As we heard already, one of the key reasons that have come up in terms of motives for people, especially in a post-COVID world, is a plan B. And there's a lot of reasons around the world: geopolitical instability, the potential of a global pandemic. Just not knowing what's going around the corner means that the plan B mobility possibilities have become one of the dominant motives, in addition to for the golden passports, just simply easier travel and better visa-free access. And if you're talking about citizenship, there's sometimes business benefits that come with that as well as lifestyle benefits too. So those are the four main drivers around the world. And what's been interesting in looking at demand over the past couple of years has, as been the rise of US citizens looking to these options. So the US is not just trying to attack the wealthiest and the most talented, it's also, to some degree, sending out the wealthiest and most talented who are looking for their own plan Bs because they're not sure what the future is going to bring. So looking at changes in demand, it's been an interesting space to watch geopolitically. But I think in general, a lot of people these days, especially if they have global lives, they're thinking about wanting to keep all those doors open to them.
Right. Let me ask Rohit a question about reducing deficit. The U.S. administration, especially Donald Trump, while making that announcement, saying that we could offer something like 10 million golden visas and reduce the trade deficit that U.S. has. Do golden visas actually help countries in reducing trade deficits?
I mean, historically, what we've seen is that objective of the governments to introduce such concepts under investment migration is the concept of inviting indirect foreign direct investment in the country, whether it's through capital infusion or any other eligibility requirements. So it is, of course, during the last 4 years, specifically after the lockdowns, when world economy was going through a different, kind of paradigm changes, we do have seen that definitely certain countries have benefited from inviting and increasing the outlay through the foreign investors in that country to invest and get those benefits of residency and citizenship. So that is one of the key aspects still where governments. In fact, what I would say that, as you mentioned earlier, in terms of being one of the most expensive, yes, it can be if this is something which comes as an introduction. But the thing is that there are other few countries which have a similar investment program. So,
all right, we're losing that connection. But a very quick question to you, Professor Surak. Do you think this is going to lead to a wealth drain also? Of course, there are about 10,000 Indian millionaires who've traveled abroad or migrated abroad in the last 2 years. If this trend continues as it is, does this also lead to a wealth drain?
It's a complicated question, in part because so much of the Indian diaspora is actually creating successful businesses all around the world. So if you take the case of Dubai, it's not necessarily a lot of successful Indian business people taking money out of India, but they're actually building businesses in other parts of the world and sometimes reinvesting in India. So it's a complicated question to answer. In terms of the programs themselves, I don't think at a $5 million price point, the U.S. is going to get anywhere close to the 1 million applicants that Trump has been predicting. If you look at similar golden visa programs, similarly expensive ones like in Australia, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, where they're in the millions in terms of their price points, they usually they usually get only a couple hundred applications per year. Certainly not the tens of thousands, certainly not the hundreds of thousands, and definitely not the millions. So if Trump launches this program at 5 million, there'll be some people who look for it. It'll be an easy way, for example, if you want to put your children in U.S. schools and you have that sort of money on hand to do it, 5 million is nothing to you. Might as well spend it. But I don't think it's going to have the actual scale of impact that is being projected at this point in time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor Surak, for joining us. And thank you very much to Rohit Bharadwaj as well. We're taking a short break. But coming up on the other side, we bring you a conversation with former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Ivo Daalder, on the escalating tensions between U.S. and NATO and the outlook on India, China, and the U.S. relationship going ahead. Stay tuned.